Next will be Brian Strauss from Sports Illustrated.
Thanks, Michael. Hey, Greg, good to see you again. On the surface, it seems like you and Gareth Southgate may be kind of kindred spirits in a way, presiding over sort of a generational change. You guys both care a lot, talk a lot about culture, care a lot about culture. What's your relationship with him like? And do you kind of see some, despite the status of the individual teams in some ways in the world, do you see some similarities between the way you guys approach things?
No, absolutely. And, Gareth was the first person I reached out to outside of former U.S. coaches. And the reason why is because I saw a lot of synergies or similarities between, the team that he took over and the team that we took over. We knew it was going to be a new generation of players coming through. We knew we were going to be working with a very young group. I thought it was important to establish a strong culture within the team. And I picked his brain early on in 2018, end of 2018. As soon as I got hired, my first trip over, I met with him and we talked at length, and we stayed in touch ever since then. I consider him an excellent coach and have a lot of respect for what he's done with the program.
Next will be Doug McIntyre from Fox.
Thanks, Michael. Greg, you kind of alluded to this in your opening comment there. You play England second. There's a chance you play Wales or Scotland. Facing a British team potentially in the first game, how much might that help playing England just from a style point of view, the way they're going to approach it? Curious if you could touch on that. Thanks.
I think England has a ton of quality, right? Their team, is 5-6. But if you look at their right backs alone, it's insane, right? You start with Trent Alexander-Arnold, you go to Trippier, you go to Kyle Walker, you go to Reece James. You're going Wan-Bissaka. They have 5 right backs that are playing at some of the biggest clubs in the world. So they're a different animal as far as I'm concerned in their player pool depth. I also think their style of play has evolved a lot, and so I wouldn't make too many comparisons. Wales is a solid team. We played them before. You guys saw that friendly, and they were a difficult team. They're missing Gareth Bale in that game, and a couple other players. So that's going to be a difficult game if Wales happens to go through. And Scotland is always difficult with their spirit and the way they approach the game. And then, as I mentioned, Ukraine is a totally different type of opponent. But we want to get off to a good start in the World Cup. That's always key is doing well in your first game. So we'll be prepared and try to win the first game.
Thanks, Greg.
We'll go to Ron Blum from the Associated Press.
Hi, Greg. If you look at it, the political implications of a matchup against Ukraine, drawing attention to the game, is that good or bad for you guys, or neutral? And playing the first day and having probably 6 days of training with the whole group, assuming a bunch of guys have Sunday games, is that hard to deal with? Or given what you've had the last 7 months, is that simpler to deal with?
Well, it makes it easier that we did it the last 7 months for sure, but it's challenging. When I was talking to some other coaches, they were hoping they were in the later groups, that they got up to 12 days of preparation before their first game. So I think it does make a difference. It's not the end of the world. We are used to it, and you have to deal with what comes your way. In terms of the political implications of the game versus Ukraine, what I would say is if Ukraine makes it there, it's a wonderful accomplishment. I think if the people of Ukraine can get some hope by their team playing in the World Cup, it's amazing. And I think it will be more of a celebration in my eyes than political ramifications. I think, we're all pulling for Ukraine. We're all behind them. We're all supporting them. And we hope that, the situation resolves or as soon as possible.
We'll go to Paul Tenorio from The Athletic.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, Greg. Hopefully my Wi-Fi holds up okay. I'm down here in Costa Rica still, so it's a bit shaky.
You got stuff, or you're visiting family?
No, I'm visiting family here. You just rattled off the right back depth chart, 5 deep for England. I think it speaks to the familiarity that Americans have with English football, the access to the Premier League. You also have players playing over there. You have Eunice and Anthony who grew up in that system and are familiar with those players. How much does that familiarity help not just in preparing perhaps tactically for you, but in maybe taking away any sort of intimidation factor that might exist with such talent, that might have been there against a Brazil or an Argentina or France, and maybe isn't as strong against England because of that familiarity. Thank you.
I think that's a good point, Paul. I really do. Most Americans are familiar with all of England's squad. I think it puts a bigger target on England's back because they're the biggest league in the world and they have some of the most famous players in the world. Some of our players are playing in the Premier League, are playing alongside these players, are teammates with these players. Others are competing against them. So overall, I think it's a positive draw. I mean, it's not taking anything away from the quality. They still have a ton of quality. They're still a really well coached team, and they're still a very good team. But I think that does help somewhat that you're very familiar with them.
Next will be Grant Wall.
Hey, Greg, good to see you. I hope you're hanging in after all the travel. I wanted to ask about friendlies coming up and wondering, will this draw influence the friendlies you schedule for, I assume it's June and September. And is that already in the process right now over in Doha with finalizing those friendlies?
Definitely. Tom King has been talking to teams. I just got a text a couple of minutes ago about teams he's spoken to, and we would try to craft it somewhat based on who we have in our group and then who we can cross over with when we eventually get out of our group. So those two factors will come into play. And then it's just trying to get the opponents that match up with them pretty well. And then it's always, it's always going to be different. It's not an exact science. It's not like the science. It's not like if you play Saudi Arabia, that's an exact replica of Iran, but it will help, I think, with the familiarity with the body types, the athletic types, I think can only help.
We'll go to Jeff Carlo from ESPN FC.
Thanks, Michael. Hey, Greg. A couple preparation questions.
Yep.
One is, the fact that you don't know exactly who you're going to play in that first game, how much does that kind of complicate your preparations? And I was wondering if you could dig in a little bit more to your plans for the Nations League. Are you going to bring in the full squad for that? I mean, you mentioned the other day that there's never enough time. So I'm just wondering if you're trying to maximize your time in that way.
Yes, I've already spoken to the group, and it's about, we're going to need them for those 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks in June. That's just how it goes, because we're only going to have, maybe 10 days in September, and that's it. The World Cup, we had plans to go to Dubai a week before with the entire team. I don't think that's going to happen, because a week before our first game, we have to be in Qatar 5 days before your first game, and that's basically when the guys are released from their clubs. So a little bit of change of plans based on when we're playing, but we'll deal with it. But it does make June important, and it makes September important. Guys need to be available for that. They need to be involved in that if they want an opportunity to compete in the World Cup.
Next will be Daniel Nora from Univision.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, Greg. How are you doing?
Hey, Daniel.
I have a couple of questions. The first one, are you expecting to send a scout team for that European playoff in June? And the other one is, if in the conversations with other coaches, maybe some FIFA members in Qatar, the idea of bringing 26 players in the roster have been in the last days, in the last hours. Or you expecting to go with 23? I don't know what are they planning for the World Cup.
No, there's been discussions. We had a coaches meeting today, and I'm not going to get into it specifically, but there were discussions around roster size and prelim roster sizes. That was a discussion. And, I don't know what stage it's at now. I don't know how it's going to get how they're going to progress that conversation that we had, but there definitely was a conversation around that. What was your other question, Daniel? Your first part again?
About scouting.
Oh yeah, about scouting. We'll be playing them, so it won't be someone with the direct coaching staff, but we will send someone there. We will get footage of those games. Yes.
Next will be Nancy Armour from USA Today.
Hi, Greg. Thanks for doing this. I'm wondering, with having such a short window between when the guys are released and when your first game is, how important is it that you've had such a large pool of players that you've worked with over the last 2 years? They've all gotten to know each other. They've all built cohesion. You won't have to kind of do that on the fly when you get there. So I'm wondering how important that is.
Yeah, the team culture side of it is important, and it's a strong group. It's a tight knit group, and we've been intentional about how we've been forming thise relationships over these last 3 years, and the team's in a good spot when it comes to that. We'll never have enough time on the field, which is a shame, but that is what it is, and we're going to have to be really effective in these weeks in June, and then when we get together in September, because when we get to Qatar, it's basically prep for a game, and you go from there.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.